Thank you very much, Andrew. And my name is Kheng. I am your moderator for this very interesting and well-represented panel. I'm from Standard Chartered Bank, and let me reintroduce my panel again. On my left, I have Mr. Rene Pedersen, Managing Director of AP Moller Maersk Singapore. We have Mr. Andrew Hoare, the Director of PCL Tankers. We have Nitin, Mathur, Managing Director of Wallem Group, Mr. Shmuel, CEO of Express Feeders, and Mr. James Woodrow, Managing Director of China Nav. These gentlemen here represent leading Singapore shipping players in the various industries: containers, tankers, bulkers, and the liners. And being the last session, that sets us up very nicely to talk a little bit about the concerns for the next 2 and 20 years and the strategies in future-proofing shipping. We had some really key, interesting messages from the various panels today. We had the opening session on markets where the bulkers and containers have an extremely positive outlook. Tankers had a positive outlook, but is on the reversion. There's a strong focus on ESG and in carbon offsets. So all these falls clearly in our various conversations and your planning for the future. Before we go into detail, I want to kind of get your thoughts, as we've recently heard from James Woodrow and Sinket here on ship owners being very defensive and sometimes anti-cyclical in planning for the future. With your various industries in different places in the cycle, how does that impact your mentality and decision making in planning for the future? Are you on the defensive mode? Are you on the growth mode? And how does that kind of roll into your investment decisions? Anyone would like to kind of touch on that first?
Is anyone more?
Yeah.
Thank you. Is it on? Thank you for that question. It's indeed interesting. I think for a company like Maersk, we basically embarked on a new strategy back in 2016, going from being a more traditional shipping line to be an integrated container logistics provider, basically taking out pain points of our customers through end-to-end solutions. The market developments the last 1-2 years is of course something we enjoy, but it has basically not changed our strategy. We are basically executing on the strategy we decided on back then. Thanks.
We don't really own any assets, but we work with investors and financial institutions who do. Yeah, in Wallem, we don't really own any assets, but we work with owners and investors who do. As SK, I think, had pointed out, every owner is looking at getting into the market or an investor is looking at getting into the market at a low cycle and exiting at the high. And we being such a fragmented industry the way we are, that it has been, we do see that at the moment, limited opportunities and not very many investors taking that approach of going out and investing in a big way. So I think very cautious, I would say.
I think as far as China navigation, next year we celebrate 150 years. So we're the ultimate sort of long-term investor. And that does make us fairly conservative, but we've certainly, over the last 7 or 8 years, we built up our Swire Bulk business that was we just separated off on the 1st of January. Look, certainly we're cautious. The market is so strong at the moment that we've invested over the last 7 years. So now is the time to actually make some money and return it to our shareholders, because they've been very, very patient over the last decade. So I think now it's the time to keep investing in our people, keep investing in digital, keep investing in decarbonisation, but it's also the time to actually use the assets we've invested wisely over the last decade and actually earn some money, return it to our shareholders.
we've established Eastaway ship ownership last year, and it was the end of a process where we built up our own fleet over the past 4 or 5 years that has reached more than 50 vessels. And we are looking at it a bit differently than China navigation. We think that going into 2023 with the CII and the EXI, there is a big uncertainty about the ability of vessels actually to meet these targets. We are looking at our fleet, which is almost 100% second-hand boat. We didn't order any vessels, almost any vessels. And we can see, looking at them, that they will find it very difficult to meet the targets. And we have used the good times that started about a year ago, initially to buy second-hand vessels, but this is mainly opportunistic because of the decoupling in end 2020 and beginning of 21 between the charter market and the second-hand market. There was, we thought, a huge opportunity. Now it's gone, and we've put in a few new orders of mid-size. Well, for Maersk it's probably small, for us it's big. We'll call it mid-size vessels, which, according to what we've calculated, are considerably more efficient, and that we think will be significant in the years going forward.
I think at PCO, I think we've want to learn from the past and the mistakes we've made in the past. So I think we will avoid people who want to commit assets to you for a nice long-term charter underwritten by our balance sheet. So I think we're using today's markets to improve our balance sheet. And having some exposure, both myself personally on the tanker and the gas and the dry side, I shall make sure that all the money that we make on the dry side goes up to the shareholders and then back down to the tanker and the gas side. Because please, please, please do not invest in dry bulk now, because I think it's possibly not the right time.
Thank you. I mean, I'm picking up common themes that, ESG has been a big debate and topic of discussion today, and clearly one in your investment decisions. I want to kind of tap a little bit into that. Maybe starting with you, Rene. Maersk has been one of the loudest voices in the decarbonization journey for maritime, and you're putting capital to the cause, right? With the latest announcement of your investments into methanol, where we've just heard discussions where some of these alternate fuels might not be the most economically viable options today. How does that fall into your investment decisions when you're balancing profit and purpose?
You're right. We have invested in a number of methanol container vessels. And I think you have to see it as a part of our commitment to reduce our CO2 footprint. Our ambition is to reduce it by 60% by 2030, and of course the end goal is to reach a zero carbon emission operation by 2050. We do this because we want to be a part of the solution, but we also do it because it's expected by our customers, also by investors, financial institutions. There's a lot of bankers here today, our employees, and also the society in general. Why are we focusing on methanol for now? Methanol is definitely not the only solution. We're also looking at ammonia, we're also looking at lithium, we're also looking at other options. But we feel that methanol is the fastest and easiest way to the path. We have engines that already exist, engines that can run on methanol. It's a safe operation, it's non-toxic, it's liquid at normal temperatures, pressure, etc. So that's basically the reason. Actually, the biggest challenge is not to order the vessels. The biggest challenge is to source the methanol the day that we need it. And that's basically a chicken and egg situation, because no one will produce methanol in the volumes that we needed if we are not prepared to commit the tonnage. For just the 8 16,000 TEU vessels we have ordered this time around, we need something like 350,000 tons of methanol per year. It's no big deal. It's a quite big deal. So that will be the real challenge. So with our investment, we hope we can send a signal to the market that we are in for this, and hopefully there will be someone who will produce the methanol, and we are happy to go into a partnership with them if they're interested.
Excellent. Maybe following on that, Shmuel, again, and following on your point in regards to investing in eco ships, for a regional liner operator like yourselves, how are you managing this, especially in the light where you operate both in the east and west, where there might be differing investor sentiments, regulatory environment, and also kind of capital access as well?
Yeah, we are very concerned when you look at the current fleet. If you analyze the fleet under 2,200 TEUs nominal, 41% of it is 15 years or older. The order book itself is 6% of the fleet. And what we have seen since the 2008 crisis is actually the usual tonnage providers have disappeared, going the KG system and all the other European structures are mostly disappeared. Chinese leasing houses don't look at anything that is not 5 digits in TEU. They simply don't understand how it can be so small. So you don't have anyone to talk to. And this is a real worry when we look, especially in Europe, where on one hand, the regulatory environment is more stringent and will become tougher. And there are we serve a lot of small city ports. And our worry is that one day we'll find ourselves with cities saying we don't want vessels near our citizens. What we've done is we are working on it. It's not yet in our order book. We are trying to design a more efficient, modern feeder vessel targeted at the European market. We believe from the initial numbers that it can be at least 40% more efficient than current vessels that we operate. And we are looking at a staggered approach where first we will hopefully design and build a series of these vessels, and which will reduce carbon emission by something like 40%. And we will build them with an option to retrofit them into a green fuel of the future. Currently, we are looking at new engines that are able to burn methanol, but not necessarily. And we are working with yards and with engine manufacturers to find a solution. So the idea is we'll put an efficient vessel on the water, hopefully in 2-3 years. And then in the first or second special survey, we'll retrofit her when we know or understand better what propulsion, green propulsion there is.
Thank you very much. I think that is, like you rightly pointed out, a challenge. And this forum provides an interesting insight on the Asian perspective on addressing some of these issues and the discussions that are coming up. Maybe if I could flip the question slightly differently and direct this to James and Andrew. With the general bullish sentiment, there is a tendency for speculators to come back in this sector, and their propensity is likely less focused on alternate fuels and decarbonization. With your firms being in different that cuts across different sectors in shipping, what's your view on this, and how does that kind of impact your capital allocation decision?
So certainly it makes us hesitant. Certainly you look at the amount of container new buildings coming 23, 24, that's somewhat of a concern for us. We, as Swire Shipping, we've invested over the last 5 years, so we've got a very new fuel-efficient fleet. So we've got a different fleet profile from Express. So we've made the investment to be more fuel-efficient. For us now, it's a big step as to what is the next fuel. And it's great to see Maersk providing that leadership. As a much smaller operator, I think we're happy to be a fast follower, but we can't at the moment quite see where it's going. So I think we're looking really to now wait to see for shipbuilding prices to come down again, and then have a look at whether it's ammonia, whether it's methanol. So at the moment we're on the fence, taking part in the discussions, trying to see where it's going to lead. But certainly the amount of investment coming in certainly in containers is concerning. I think the good news has been for dry bulk is that slots have been taken for container vessels, which is positive, I think, for dry bulk. It means that the dry bulk boom period is likely to go on for longer than it might otherwise have done.
I think I would agree with James as well. I think we talked earlier that 30% of the fleet on order today has alternative propulsion. A lot of that you'll find is also just with options to convert. So in fact, probably the actual ships committed in the yards now with alternative propulsion is less than that. So what does that mean? That means that shipping is still going to be the bad boy and the target of regulation for many, many years to come. These ships, even with the best finance, are only going to be trading at least for 15 years. So maybe the risks that we're going to see is that the life longevity of a ship is going to continue to compress. And that means both ships on the water today and also new ships coming out of the yard, which are still not yet at the most contemporary. So again, full marks to Maersk for maybe jumping that LNG hurdle and going for something zero carbon. As James said, it is great that the yards are filling up with container ships and a few bulkers, and which hopefully will support the tanker sector, which is very, very difficult to build, I think, to at least say 2014. So that does at least mean for the existing assets that you have, there could be quite a sharp recovery in some of the market sectors.
Fantastic, and it's great input to see the reactions and insights from different sectors coming together to form the family that is shipping. Nitin, over to you now. Wallem has been on the forefront of this, right? Because you support players across the industry, you're advising investors that are coming in. What are you seeing from a speculative investor's perspective in coming into a market like this, where they're looking at strong bulker markets and container markets, where contrasting to a weaker tanker market? What are their thought process, and where are they putting their money?
Right. So actually, when they look at bulkers these days, actually, I totally agree with what's been said here, James. You said extreme caution. When they look at bulkers and containers, there's an absolute no-no when it comes to new investments, because the markets are already at high. When you look at 5-year values, 10-year values, it just doesn't really add up. No investment decision makes sense for any opportunistic investor. And when you look at tankers, though the charter markets are right down to bare levels, but the asset values haven't really come off. So again, those decisions are a little bit more difficult for speculative investors. But I do see more focus towards tankers than on any dry ship.
Well, thank you for that. I want to pick up on the point where Andrew mentioned that shipping will still, despite the various initiatives done to decarbonize the industry, it will still leave a carbon footprint. We've heard from John and the panel on carbon credits and carbon trading. I want to kind of get your views on setting a carbon price and having a carbon trading platform, especially in Asia, where it's voluntary compared to Europe, where it's a regulatory driven one. What are your views on this?
Should I start? I'll do. I think it's the legislation is not finalized in Europe, but we all expect that shipping will get including in the trading system there. I think in a perfect world we would have a global trading system. What worries me the most is that we get different trading systems in different regions. But that said, I think we need a trading system. And I also think that carbon emissions has to come with a price. Yeah, in that respect, we're all in.
Thank you.
So the markets that SWA shipping services are Pacific Islands. And for them, this is an existential problem. Basically, they're going to go underwater. So their livelihoods will disappear. So for us, for the communities that we serve, this is extremely important. And you'll have seen that the Marshall Islands, Solomon Islands put forward at MEPC 76 a price of $100 a ton on carbon. And that was designed to actually incentivize change, to get to raise the expectation among our industry to move forward. And we're supportive of that, because I think we need that kind of level if it's really going to change behavior. 100 tons of $100 a ton equates to about $300 a ton on bunkers. Now that's enough to really start to drive some change. So I think it is important that we start to get on the front foot. My previous job was a director of Cathay Pacific Cargo. Aviation, you ended up again with it being a regional scheme. That was then what started to push the industry for a global solution. And I think we're going to end up with EU starting, there'll be regional schemes. Hopefully that will then push the IMO to global action, because I agree, what we don't really want is a whole lot of regional schemes that mean that competition gets distorted. So it's going to come. Hopefully then the IMO can react a bit more quickly than they usually do, and we can actually get a price on carbon, and we can really start moving forward to decarbonize our industry.
Anyone else have any thoughts on this?
I think it's one of the advantages of what the EU did, which I would still call a tax. I think it has still put the term carbon in the discussion with many ship owners. I think apart from the container sector, there was little connection until very, very recently. We heard earlier Braemar and the Clarksons and Simpsons are setting up carbon trading desks. We've got leading trading houses here also doing the same. So I think from a Singapore perspective in particular, I think if we could bring some of that sort of speculative mindset that's often being deployed in ordering ships. We have a very, very large FFA dry bulk market here in Asia and globally as well. I think if we can use this carbon, frankly, as something that can be heavily traded in Singapore, apart from it being resolving many of the issues around sustainability that we've talked about, I can see it as a very, very interesting product to be traded in Singapore. We're looking at it very closely to trade ourselves, whether or not we peg to ships or not, just as an activity to do as a shipping company, knowing about the market. So I think, I think this direction is good. Although I think the attempt by the EU to do so, I think, may take money out of shipping. It should be probably put into shipping. We know that argument. But I think from our perspective, we should just make the opportunity to use it and decide amongst yourselves as a company how you want to deploy it or apply it and offset or just purely trade. So I think it's quite exciting.
I would just like to add one idea to this. Tim, our chairman, is planning to raise an idea to the World Shipping Council that now that container shipping is doing so well, one of the ideas is to create a fund where we, as shipping companies, will invest in green projects which will generate carbon offset credits and distribute it back to the investors, to the shipping companies. I think for a long time shipping has been the poor little boy, and we got a lot of exemptions, and following the last 6 months I doubt we'll be in that position again. And I think we need to take the initiative. We think we need to take the initiative, and that could be a good idea where on one hand we show goodwill, and on the second we actually take control of what we are doing and standardize, and we set what we want, what is a carbon offset, and we will invest in it and standardize it and make it more transparent to all. Because today there are, I think, I don't know if Maersk, but I know MSC has and others, you can buy HAPAG, you can buy carbon offsets. I think if we do it as an industry instead of each one building all the compliance, that can save a lot of money and make the process more efficient.
Thanks, Shmuel. Fantastic idea, and I know of a platform that is ready to support that with the CX guys here. I mean, touching on pivoting a little bit, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about people, as Abhishek kind of mentioned earlier. The pandemic has changed, drastically changed the way the shipping business has been operated, and in shipping, working from home for many is not an option, right? So, and where the scenarios today and COVID being here for a little while, what are your companies doing in investing for the future and preparing the people for the new normal? Maybe Nitin, we can start with you as Wallem is cuts across all the industries and is in the forefront of this. Yeah.
Right. So before the pandemic set in, we were already looking at digitalization in a big way, modernizing the fleets, looking at sensor technology, looking at AI. What the pandemic did was actually acted as a catalyst. So it became more and more important for our clients to actually implement that and make improve technology. Improve transparency through technology. So looking at it right now, I think that part has gone in really well. One part which I think Abhishek touched upon was the humanitarian element, which is the crew change crisis that happened. That has actually taken a lot of time, both ashore and on board the ships, and it has created a lot of awareness on mental health and things like that, where we've put in processes in place now to facilitate crew change in a proper systematic way, and ensure that the crew remains safe at all times. Provide the crew and their families with support and help, because the crew stays on board, but their families stay back at home, and they are still suffering. And it's coming from third world countries. A lot of them, the families are going through a lot of turmoil, and then we needed to actually support them through the company, we have a part of Wallem which is called Women of Wallem, where the families end up supporting each other, and we support that initiative. So that has kind of gone in really well, and we've been able to manage it. Also, I mean, while we are on that subject of crew change, I would also like to point out, together with MPA, we started off this, which Lehoon touched upon, which was the crew change task force, or this was the SFTF. And with that, we've kind of created corridors of safe travel for crew from the crew supplying countries all the way up to ships. So hopefully that kind of solves or helps in solving the problem. But of course, the shipping is so fragmented. Everybody having different regulations, it just becomes a lot more difficult than that problem itself.
Gentlemen, anyone else want to?
I think just one other comment. As far as it's not just that the crew have been on the ships for 10 months, 11 months. It's the fact that with contactless port calls, some of them actually haven't been off the ship for 10 or 11 months. So normally they would be able to get off the ship, go into the whichever port they're in. So I think that's the mental health effects of that can't be underestimated. So they've really been at the forefront of bearing the brunt of COVID in our industry.
Yeah, I think crew change is high on our agenda still. The situation is much better today than it was 1 year ago, where it was a real humanitarian crisis. But it is a very fragile situation, and I think it's important that we all keep it high on our agenda. I was happy to hear Lehoon also giving this priority, and I think it's important that all shipping hubs, all ports, but also trading nations keep this on their agenda, because the global supply chains will stop if we can't do crew change. The welfare and well-being part is a part of that. But I think in many ways, I think the seafarers has somehow for many years been forgotten. They were somehow invisible. And what the last 18 months has showed us is that they are no longer forgotten. Now it's discussed in the UN, in many international fora, etc. This is high on the agenda, but it needs to stay on that agenda because the situation is still fragile. And the next step will then be to get all our seagoing colleagues vaccinated. And again, thank you, Lehoon, also for all the great work you are doing in this respect. We are in a situation, we have close to 50% of our seafarers vaccinated at this stage. And if we look at those at sea, it's even higher. But we need all countries to step in here and help to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Rene.
I think take it from the current crisis, I think something that makes us not sleep so well at night is the fact that I think there's a recent report by BIMCO or the Chamber of Shipping, we're going to be 90,000 crew members shot in 2 to 3 years' time. So there are many, many contexts to think now. I mean, crew changes are more inefficient, so you've got people in quarantine, so that number is actually probably already rising. You've also got, we're talking about the prospect of these 30% of ships with new complex fuels. I don't think we even have the training or the people to apply to those statistics, to their statistic, but 2 to 3 years' time, there will be ships on the water. So I think I don't have the answers, we don't have the answers. We're just obviously trying to retain as many crew that we can in an inflationary environment. They deserve to be paid more money, but it's really, really hard. I think it's probably one of the more imminent challenges facing shipping over the next couple of years, even in advance of the decarbonisation.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And picking up on these points, so I'm picking up concerns on decarbonization, investments in new technology, and now people, and the war on talent. And I'm going to take up Lê Hoon's offer to get feedback while we have a distinguished panel of ship owners here in Singapore. I'll put it out there to the panel. What would your wish list be, for MPA to help address, some of the concerns that you've highlighted today, and how can we, kind of collaborate to do better? This is a great way to drop subtle hints to Lê Hoon. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, if I'm to start, I think Lê Hoon pointed out about ISP, and I think great initiatives. When it comes to when you joined in, you talked about the 3 Ds and decarbonization and disruption, and so you've actually fulfilled most of them, and in fact you've done a great job with all of that. I think one place where I would really like to see us doing better is taking lead at times of crisis. I think leaders emerge during times of adversity, and this is one of those times when in the time of disruption in COVID times, we really need to step up and show that we are truly world leaders in the maritime space. And in the absence of true leadership in shipping, which is when you look at international bodies, when you look at international companies, they're all so fragmented, everybody doing their own thing and everybody pulling their own agendas. I think it's time for us as Singapore to take that initiative, take that lead, and marshal the soldiers.
Fantastic, Nitin.
Thank you. Yes, I can echo what Nitin says, and I think we have a fantastic basis, as Lê Hoon shared. 160,000 seafarers has been crew changed in the present crisis. It's quite impressive. I think I will pick up on another point mentioned by Lê Hoon, and that's strategic partnership. I think that's really crucial. What we are not interested in is, to be honest, fly-by-night ship owners. We want someone who wants to be a part of this community and contribute to this maritime community. We have been here for many decades. We have been owning ships under Singapore flag since the 1970s. It has been a long marriage. Ups and downs, but we are still in love, and I think we should really emphasize this strategic relationship. That's very important. Thanks.
Thank you, Rene. Anyone else?
Maybe just one thing. I think just it's how do we sell our industry, particularly to the local Singapore population, because I think we need to excite them about our industry, and I think actually we've got a lot more good news to give than we give ourselves credit for. So I think if we can continue to really sell the Singapore shipping story, then I think we'll be able to attract those really top quality people into the industry, rather than being lawyers or bankers. We actually need some of them in shipping as well. So I think we've got a good story to tell, and we should really all work together on that.
Actually, over the past year, we've recruited some amazing interns. I don't know, maybe they're reading the financial news of shipping, but really, when you look at our intern quality, they have increased a lot. I mean, we have worked together with MPA on scholarship, but you can see the quality of people has improved.
I think to build on that, there's a lot of focus on the new people coming in. I think the MPA is great on bringing people in. They're pretty good at people at the twilight of their careers as well. But I think you've got to really focus on that sort of 30 to 45 bracket, because I think Singapore creates functionally very strong people, technically very strong people. But then the young Mo's like me are also propelled in to some of these sort of general management or senior management positions. And I think really want to see a change such that the local talent can become less of a specialist over time and more of a generalist, because I think that's really, really important for Singapore to have that cadre of people right up to the top of the organization. We're also homegrown heroes. So I think any more that you can do in that front, you're doing a lot with the MBAs, whatever else, but any more you can do, I think would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Some great anecdotes and fantastic feedback to process here. And with this, this ends the final panel. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time, your thoughts, and your inputs here. And I'd like to thank Andrew and the Marine Money team for organizing this session. And over back to you, Andrew.